Brookfield is.
in Milwaukee, near
Ah,
Milwaukee.
okay, nice, nice.
Yes, I'm in Brookfield.
Evening, working hard, huh?
Yeah. Well, the markets went to shit. We had some issues, and we thought we had $12 million, and we don't have $12 million, and so now going around trying to find $12 million.
Was this the previous deal or the next deal?
It was the next deal. So the story is we had been previously working with a group of investors, and essentially what they were doing is they were borrowing against their portfolios to do,
Oh wow.
various transactions, which is normal. This is a lot of people do this, right? But
In
then
in a low interest
obviously,
in a low
yeah,
interest
which
rate
which is
environment,
great,
yeah,
which is great in a low
yeah,
interest environment because it's free money. It's literally free money, right? You
yeah.
can borrow at like what 2-3% probably, and then you can deploy into an asset that's generating like, I mean, your hurdle rates are quite low, right? But now
Yeah.
that's not so tenable. They kind of, so they kind of told us this like maybe 10 days ago, something like that. So
Was
we
this
can
the
do
need
it
or
with as little as 5.4. We have, I think, three secured.
okay?
So, and then there's another like 600 of personal money that we can put in, but then you still need to find like the balance two. I think based off how things are going, it might need to be like syndicated to smaller investors, which means it's going to be a
Two.
pain in the
That's gonna be a
butt.
rough.
It's a pain in the butt. You're gonna have a bunch of conversations or 100K checks.
Yeah, that's why you need a media platform, man. You need distribution point. I gotta just send
A
out one
lot of people,
blast.
a lot of people do this. Like we've talked to some people who've like, oh, I have like a distribution list of like 70,000, or my podcast gets X or Y, but I think it doesn't.
What? Well, I mean, is there an ask? Like, if there's like an ask, then yeah,
No, I think
because
it's
a
just
good deal's a good
usually
deal.
the asset class is too specific,
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Because
You would need to find. Yeah,
it's too specific because it's industrial. So first of all, not a lot of people are fluent with industrial in the first place. It's kind of a new asset class. If you were talking about like multi-tenant residential, people will be like, "Oh yeah, I know what that is,"
yeah.
because in their heads they can, number one, conceptualize it, and number two, a
It's
lot of people when they
tangible.
invest, they start in multi-tenant or in residential, and then they branch out to multi-tenant residential if they're successful, or they go
Yeah.
up, or commercial. People understand commercial to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
right? But industrial is it's relatively niche or new. It's relatively new, I think, for a lot of people. And also industrial in the Midwest is also quite new
Yeah.
to
Also
even
another.
more people. So yeah, you're like, oh, hey, I know like 70, 80,000 people. That's great. But like the addressable segment of that
Oh yeah.
is maybe like 2%.
Or even building it from that. Yeah. But I mean, it's just
Yeah. But it's kind of nice. I
it's
kind of like it that way because, like, if we don't have a lot of people, that means you can get
yeah.
better,
It filters. It
more
filters.
more juice for you,
Well, the
more yum yums
the
for
nice part
us.
is that I think is that if you do a long format podcast doing the pitch, and then you could tease out the nuance, it helps filter even more. Right. So if you explain it in a way that they can understand it in that format, then I mean, of course, it will widen the funnel and should help a bit. I think explain. So it's less like explaining if you were to, if you were doing direct marketing to them, right, outbound. You could let it be more
This
inbound, I guess.
I know. I just don't want to do it. Also, and like honestly, I don't want to have to
Hey, that's someone's
do like
job,
a
though.
bunch of. I don't want to do like a bunch of like Zoom calls at like 3 p.m. to like retire the
Yeah.
janitors of Idaho or something. To quote
Yeah.
Succession. I rather,
Yeah.
I'd rather just have like a more relationship-based business. But, at this point, beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Or yeah, I mean,
yeah,
unless you have
yeah.
a better method of raising money, you could share.
Uh, no, no. We're just calling a lot of people, working through the
Yeah,
Rolodexes, and
old school,
just like
old school.
it's old school, just relationships.
Yeah,
Just like one
relationships.
one phone call at a time.
Yeah, Well, in theory, if it's a warm one and you're talking to smart people, it should help a bit, I guess.
Well, no one wants to deploy anything right now. It's all very uncertain. No one, like it just they're everyone basically thinks that there's a huge debt wall coming in commercial real estate, which is true. And they're all like sort of in this mentality, like, oh, I wish I had sat on my money in '08.
Oh,
And then I would have some like super sweet deals. I could pick things up for like 5 cents on the dollar, which also,
oh, I see, I
I've
see.
heard some crazy stories. I was talking to someone in DC and he was telling me like Class B commercial is like 80% vacant. It's like a one data point, but it's like
Yeah. What is
it's
Class
bleak.
B commercial?
So like class A is like Salesforce Tower, right? It's
Okay,
super nice,
okay,
super
yeah,
pristine. It's like the creme de la creme, right? It's like
yeah.
all the amenities, like great location, really expensive, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Class B is like, okay, use the KL example. Class A would be like what's Najib's vanity project called?
Oh,
The
the Tune or Zach Tower or something.
Tune Razak Exchange. Like that thing was
Yeah.
the Class A development, right? Class B would be like where Dojo is. It's like
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
it's fine, right?
It's a good
Class C,
location. Yeah.
it's like good enough, right? It's not
Yeah.
the nicest building, but it has like it's functional, right? It's
Yeah.
nice enough. It has internet. It's decently located. Class C would be like a shop lout office in like Cheras.
I see. I see.
Like no one. Not that no one wants it. Just a different
Yeah.
product.
But the
So
bulk
everyone
of most cities would be what class must class B then, right? It's got to be the bulk of
probably Class B.
commercial real
I mean,
estate.
it depends on the market, but
That's
usually
true.
Class
Yeah.
B, Class B, Class C. I mean,
I
because
mean, if
Class
you
A
were
is just
talking
so
more developed
expensive,
cities, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Okay.
Right.
So it's 80% vacant of class B. That's pretty wild then.
I have no way to validate that, but they're like a
Yeah. It's true.
developer in DC.
Yeah.
The reports that I've read from like the data brokers are like 30 to 40%, but even 30 to 40%. But that number is actually quite reliable, I think. So 30 to 40% across all asset classes in commercial. So if you think about that, that means these guys, when they have to refi in like 2 to 3 years, they're
They have
gonna
to refi up.
there's yeah, because your interest rates are fixed for 5 years in commercial real
Yeah.
estate here, right? So when you have a refi and you finance, we bought this thing for like 100 million,
Mm-hmm.
right? Predicated on one operating income, and now your operating income is like
The yield's gone.
30% less, right? But
Yeah.
your cost of financing are now
That's
like
way higher.
2 to 3 times more. Like you're completely host.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
There's like no,
do they 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 don't they, they don't have to refinance, right?
no, they have to.
Oh.
Because if they
Oh,
don't
okay.
refinance, the bank will, their original debt holders will refinance. Well, they will readjust interest rates for them.
I see. I
So
see.
it's why it's a 5 year fixed, right? So 5 year you lock it in at whatever it was 5 years ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, right? So that's like
Yeah.
at that time is like probably 3%, 4%, depending on
Yeah.
the profile of you and depending on the profile of the asset. And
Yeah.
then now, like going into it, it's like 7. So it's already
Oh.
doubled in terms of your cost of debt, right?
Well, I
So
mean, there's going to be
double the
a.
cost of debt and then like 40% less income generated
So
from the asset.
this is where the price of retail will start to tank. Then, right? You get a lot of selling pressure because no one's gonna be able to maintain those, probably maintain the financing, right? So you would see
Office
like,
space, yeah, it's mostly office space. Retail has, I think, recovered a bit. So mostly what people are talking about are office space. So
okay,
that's what everyone's talking about is like the
office
debt
space,
wall
yeah.
is
Oh, so
coming
that's
in.
debt wall. Okay, understood.
That's what they're talking about. The debt wall is coming in commercial real estate is this imbalance between the fundamental value of the asset and like what they can get, how much they're going to be charged for it.
Yeah.
Because you consider, right, if you bought it for 100 million, and even if it's only worth 40 million now, you still owe debt
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
100 million that
Of course. Of
you
course.
bought it for.
Well, this is like the same problem of all these banks collapsing with holding bonds. It's like not too
That's
different, right?
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
There's a mismatch between the payouts, like the whole
Yeah.
period, the payouts, and what their actual liabilities are. That's
Is
exactly
that
what this is,
is that
right? So
still in the is that still in the cycle? Is that still happening? Do you think, or do you think the banks are pretty fortified at this point for like all the bad ones are getting already cleared
I
out?
think they opt. No, because I don't think they change anything, right? There were
They're
talks
just
about
holding
like,
the bonds,
yeah, they're just holding. They just you just hold it and like
but then
cross your fingers.
no one's redeeming, I guess. So then they're okay
I mean, I
if
think
everyone's
what was
holding.
What was the most recent one that collapsed? It was like
Shit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was after Silicon Valley Bank. It was
there was like
they were
two
acquired.
afterwards.
Oh, there's two. I know the one that was acquired by uh
They're
one
all
of the big.
acquired by JP Morgan.
Yeah,
Jamie
yeah, yeah.
Dimon now owns like all the banks in the US
Yes,
basically.
yes, yes.
He's like the he's it's crazy. Yeah, so I think that one actually had like a decent balance sheet. I think they had like 30%. Like the liquidity ratio on that one was actually okay. It's just, but they're going to have the same problem. This is exactly the problem. It's just a different asset class. Like, because
yeah.
these banks, their commercial loan book is a, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but usually there's like a substantial part of their balance sheet.
I
So
feel like
let's just Google this.
yeah.
What's the average commercial real estate as a percentage of banks' balance sheet? Let's just look at this. Let's see if there's any.
I'm actually very curious.
My guess is it's probably like 20%. It's like probably 15 to 20%.
Uh, that would be huge, no?
Yeah, this is the problem.
That is huge. Yeah, that's very systemic.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's so. This is exactly what people are talking about when say
do
there's
do
systemic
do
risk in the system.
do you think this is specific to U.S. or would it be similar to other developed cities?
I think any market where you have the same dynamics. So
Yeah.
um, basically, people don't want to come back to the office space, and then you have substantial deployment of capital into CRE, which is like
Mm,
probably everywhere,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But also you have to then there's a function of like regulation. Like each market is going to be a different regulatory environment, so their balance sheet, their liquidity ratio requirements would be
Yeah.
different depending on which country you're in. But I would assume that like any developed country or market would probably have a similar dynamic that's potentially brewing.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I could
But
see
yeah,
why
so
what
that's why
I could see
no
why
one
you
wants to
say
raise
the
this spend
world
money.
is ending. Okay, I understand the sentiment
Yeah,
of
because
the
it's gonna be
environment
a
of you're
huge debt
in.
wall, and all the banks are gonna go
I
kablooey, and who cares? You
I
know?
wonder if I wonder if Singapore would be the same. I know uh, like residential prices have not been very good, but I don't know about
No,
commercial. It's
Singapore's
such a dense
fine.
city, right?
Singapore's
Yeah,
residential is okay because
yeah.
it's the rent appreciation in Singapore is so like absurd
It's this is insane.
that it's fine, right? Because there's two parts of this equation, if you remember.
Yeah.
One is the interest rates are increasing. Two, these assets. Okay, let me give you an example. I'll use simple math to give you an example, right? So typically, when you buy an asset, it's there's a couple different factors that go into it. One, location and size, price. So, but the couple of metrics you look at is like price per square foot,
Yeah.
which is straightforward enough, or price per square meter, whatever, and then um, your what you call it, like how much cash flow this thing generates before you do debt servicing, right?
Yeah.
Which is called like your cap rate, right? So basically, if something generates 100 million, right, and you bought it for a billion, it's 10. The cap rate is 10,
Yeah.
right? So the net operating income, right? That's ratios
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
look at. So assume that you bought something that was generating 100 million, right? It's worth a billion, right? This was like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, right? And like interest rates on this was like, let's say 5%, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
just say 5%, right? So let's use simple numbers, right? So let's just assume you managed to finance the entire thing. It's all debt, right? You have no equity here, which means every year you owe 50,000 to the bank, or sorry, 50 million to the bank, right? And you generate 100 million. So that 50 million in between is your spread. That's what you get to pay out
Yeah.
to your investors. That's what you keep for whatever, right? Now you're in an environment where your rents are like 30 to 40% lower. So you're not generating 100 million, maybe you're generating 60 million, right? But the interest rates on your debt is now going to be like 8% to 9%, which means now your debt service is 90 million, right?
Yeah.
So it's a complete reversal. You're going from netting 50 million per year to now you're negative like 30 to 40, depending on where you are on that spectrum.
Yeah. Um. Well, I mean, yeah. The problem is debt. Yeah. The problem is debt. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the problem it's both. It's that and the fact that the income is less. right? If you had a scenario where debt was increasing, but your income was
Income was just
appreciating as well on these assets, then this wouldn't be a problem, or it would be
yeah.
less of a problem,
Correct,
right?
correct.
It's
It'd be
two
less of a
things
problem.
happening
There's just less
concurrently.
margin. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's these two things happening
yeah.
concurrently.
Jianggan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
I just
You're
can't
just
connect
using.
my earset. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, should be okay though.
And I see a printer. I've not seen a printer for a long time.
Really? You have no printer in
I'm
your
in an
office?
office. Yeah, I'm in an
Yeah.
office. Sometimes we require paper documents.
I don't have one. I probably have one. I've not used it for a long time, so I don't know
Oh,
where
I
it
see.
is.
I have a lot
And
of
the office
bureaucracy
is so
here.
messed up. So there's also this everywhere.
All right, shall we begin, guys?
Sure.
All right. 3, 2,
Ah,
1. Hello and welcome to the 28th episode of the LLB podcast. After half a year away, good evening to Dave Chang in Wisconsin. How are you, Dave?
Great. Like it. Just waiting for the great financial crash, the next one.
And good morning to Jianggan. How are you, Jianggan?
good.
You didn't sleep well? You seem a little tired there.
No, I just recovered from COVID, so that's why my voice is still a bit.
Oh shit!
Oh
Is
no.
this your second COVID?
No, it's my first time.
Oh, your first time. Oh, so you got it really late.
Yeah, so I know quite a few people who had never had it over like 3.5 years, and they got it in the last like two to 3 weeks. So I don't know what's going on, but it's very mild. I didn't even have a fever. Just but the voice is a bit weird.
Yeah. Mine was I was a person who had like 3 years nothing. I got it at the end of last year, or this end of last year or beginning of this year, and then recovered. But then I think there's like this great second wave happening apparently, like in China. Everyone was telling me about it, but it seemed okay. You know, everyone doesn't seem to care still. I
Yeah.
was just in Yunnan, and then half the people wear masks, half the people don't wear masks. It's very normal, but I guess if you get it for the first time, I guess it's pretty bad. Mine was pretty bad, where I just lost my taste for a month and a half. But health-wise, it was okay. I just have a slight cough that's like long COVID, but doesn't affect my running or anything. But yeah.
I still managed to have some hot pot.
What's the point of life if you can't taste?
Yeah. Well, I think my taste is a little bit blunted. I think I'm like 90, 95% back, but then sometimes it just doesn't feel as strong.
No,
so I
that'd
don't.
be a deal breaker,
I
man.
think it's just my psychology. I don't know. I just have to imagine.
Why
maybe it
live
tastes
if you can't taste? It's, it turns into ash in your mouth. What's the point?
You could be super healthy. Apparently, you don't just eat raw vegetables all the time.
Yeah. No, no way, man. No deal. No deal.
So what do you guys want to talk about first? We want to talk about continuing Dave's conversation on the end of the world.
Oh. It's not the end of the world. It's just.
I mean,
there's
there's a lot of debt we were talking about. U.S. has apparently has resolved the agreements between the two parties of increasing the debt ceiling, right? It seems that things can move forward for the next 2 years, so that at least that's some good news, no? Or where do you? Yeah.
Assuming it gets voted through. I mean,
You don't
it still
think
has
it
to
will
pass.
happen?
No, I mean, it probably will. I think there's a lot of like pandering to the base, but I don't think anyone is actually willing to like play a game of like chicken in that way. Especially because at this point, like it's quite obvious if one or two people don't vote for it, like whose fault it's going to be.
Oh yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
no
one
like
wants to be at
plausible
fault.
deny. Yeah, you can't. What's that phrase where like there's like a term where basically it's like diffuse responsibility, right? So you
Yeah.
can sort of like, oh, it wasn't me, but now if they, they stonewall, then it's going to be very clearly on those people that are stonewalling. So I don't think anyone's going to
Yeah.
play that game. It's just the risk reward ratio is just too far off. Right? Like you're not, the rewards are not that high, but if you blow up the entire
What happened
US economy / global
if it doesn't
economy,
go through?
everyone will remember you for the rest of your life as that guy
Yeah.
or girl.
Yeah. Sorry, Jianggan, what were you saying?
What will happen if it doesn't go through?
Essentially, there's a couple of, like, from what I understand, there's some accounting tricks. So there is some revenue that the tax department will collect, uh, just because U.S. players will pay their taxes. So they can probably, um, what's the word, like roll it for a couple of weeks, but sooner or later they won't be able to pay their obligations.
Yeah.
They just don't have the money.
I mean, it's happened before, right? That we've gone where the government, U.S. government, had to furlough employees for a few weeks until it
Yeah,
passed.
I remember it was like 2011 is I think what you're talking about, right? And I
Yeah,
don't think we
yeah,
ever got to a point where they had. It's a good question. I don't remember what happened last time.
yeah. I just
So,
remember people were like, that a lot of people didn't have to go to work, and then eventually it was resolved. Which I think. I mean, I guess it's the bigger question is like, what is the implications of this long term? Does that
if it
affect?
if it defaults, if the U.S.
No, if you
defaults,
keep increase, of course, if you increase the debt ceiling, well, I think that's probably more important because it's more likely going to pass. I think, like you said, like no one wants to be the guy who does that. So, um, what are the long term implications? Economically, politically, strength wise of the U.S. Right?
well, no one knows, right? This is kind of the whole point. Like no one
Yeah.
actually knows like what it is. But if you read um, I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with like Ray Dalio's work,
Yeah.
the Great Cycle. I think he released that like a year and a half ago. Like
Yeah.
essentially, his entire premise is that the infinite printing uh, of money fundamentally will break at some point, right? It's just
Yeah.
no one knows when that breaking point is. And I kind of agree with him on this one. Like as we were talking about before with um, commercial real estate, sooner or later, like
Yeah.
the
It's already been.
fundamentals of what you're doing will catch up with you. It's just a question of when.
Yeah.
So Dave, I've been reading some books about modern monetary theory, and so of course there's lots of arguments saying that for the federal government doesn't really matter. What matters is inflation, and the government can theoretically sort of raise as much debt as possible because it's essentially either taking money from it's essentially taking money away from, no, it's essentially uh, turning the private savings from one sort of dollars into another sort of dollars. It doesn't really have an impact on the economy. But of course, this is a theory which has been proposed by some people, but it hasn't been in practice, right? It hasn't been sort of implemented in practice.
Well, I think that's what we're doing now is we're testing the limits of modern monetary theory. I think my core problem with modern monetary theory is it doesn't take into, I mean, maybe it does, I don't know. My understanding of it is it doesn't take into account human nature, right? Because yes, okay, so theoretically, you are the government, and if you're the reserve currency of the world, you could theoretically print as much money
Yeah,
as you want, right? But then the question is, okay, what are you spending that money on? Those money have to go to programs, right? It's not like you just print a bunch of money and it just sits there, right? You usually get out. The reason you print the money is there's these pet projects or programs that you want to spend on. So whether that's like, I don't know, like weapons development or welfare or social security benefits, but essentially at a certain point your return on invested capital isn't going to make sense anymore, right? It's just going to be improper allocation of resources because people will always find if money is infinite, right? It's like what happened with tech startups. People will just damn with the consequences. I will hire as many people as I want because it's free. But sooner or later, that breaks, right? And it's like you have the same problem with China. In China, you have all these unproductive assets that basically the government has invested into to prop up their GDP numbers. But sooner or later, it doesn't. There's no fundamental value in whatever it was that was created, and that's what I think is my core conflict with MMT. Is it just doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think it ever addresses that.
Um, for China, wouldn't you say there's more material investment that there is? At least there's more substantial because it's not all going to like social programs where it's highly inflationary at the end of the day. They're like every new like city, everything's just brand new. They just destroy the old and pave over the new. Whether they maintain that over long term, I don't know, right? But there seems to be more of a good use case for what they're doing to build up their economy, their infrastructure, everything else.
Well, it's hard to say in the PRC, and the PRC is filled with these stories about like these ghost cities that got built that no one lives in, or these wasteful
Yeah,
infrastructure projects, all these highways that don't go anywhere, or railroad. I mean, there's like I
that's
mean, no
true.
one
That's
can
true.
actually account for the numbers because it's opaque. But I mean, if you believe there's like the reports, there's literally hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars of wasted investment, and that money could have gone to more productive assets
Yeah, I
or
think that
more productive infrastructure or deals or investment or research.
yeah, the way I guess the devil's advocate of viewing that would be is like um, they're over investing ahead of the curve, and they're waiting for the growth to catch up. Now, of course, will that bite them in the ass, or will the growth catch up? Right. That's maybe way to look at it, because you can get a sense of that when you walk around in some parts of the city where it's just like really new things, but like empty. Like there's not many people there. Um, roads are really big and clean and spread out, but it just seems like you said, it's not fully used. But yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say at this point. I think it's until they hit a wall, maybe.
I mean, but this is exactly my point, right? It's like a
Yeah,
question of human incentive. The people that built those projects, they were built because the central government has an incentive, which is you're the governor or you're the mayor or the provincial governor, your like one of your core KPIs is GDP growth, right? So I'm going to
yeah,
build. So you, as the provincial governor, if I understand that this is something that I'm going to be measured on, my incentive is to build as much to generate as much GDP as I possibly can, right? And
yeah.
then my point is, if money is unlimited, there is no stopgap to this, right? So if you take it to the extreme, theoretically, you could just have like a bunch of empty cities or like hundreds and hundreds of millions of miles of highway somewhere that's just empty because they're that's what because the
Yeah.
resources it's unconstrained.
Jianggan, Jianggan, what do you believe about modern monetary theory then? Like, what appeals to you? Like, what do you think it's very credible? His network is a struggle bus.
Yeah. Why is your number so bad, Jianggan? Aren't you at home?
I guess he's not plugged in.
We can't hear you at all, and I just see like a blur
Yeah,
of
it's so
pixels.
blur. It says network is struggling.
Maybe you should turn off your video.
Yeah. Well, while we wait for Jianggan to figure out the situation, I was asking ChatGPT the key principles of modern monetary theory. It does seem very, very inflationary. It's basically says you can never run out of money. You could just keep printing money, which I think like historically that's been proven wrong. Um, it also suggests that it's basically says one aspect of it basically does what the Fed does, right? It's supposed to ensure, price stability, full employment, has a job guarantee as well. Um, and then it says that inflation is the limiting factor. It says excess government could lead to inflation.
Yeah, but this is the inflation is like, of course it's going to happen, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
of
if
course.
you
Yeah.
if you if you increase the supply of
Well,
money and don't increase the supply of goods or goods that people want, goods and services that people want. Let me
or
be very
use
specific
or
here.
provide a return.
Commiserately or
Yeah,
use, right?
yeah,
Like the ones that have actual value, of the ones that are left, of course, going to inflate.
yeah.
I
So
think
the I say go ahead.
I I've read quite a bit over the last few weeks, and of course, I mean the argument. Um, the different facets of the argument. I mean, David mentioned about, I mean, the production of goods that people actually want. So that was actually one of the key arguments as well, saying that okay, money is not the issue. You should not really worry about money. You should not really worry about federal deficit, and the emphasis should be the production in society. I mean, are you able to produce goods that can actually be consumed, which is corresponding to whatever money that you are issuing, so that inflation doesn't become a problem. Because
Hmm.
a lot of technology, a lot of the advancements in sort of manufacturing, whatever, is actually deflationary, right? So
Sure.
so
Yeah.
so so theoretically, you should achieve that kind of balance. Sure, theoretically, that the government should aim towards achieving that balance rather than arguing about the deficit. I mean, I think that's the main argument. But of course, it adds lots of caveats to things. So I'm arguing for this, but with this caveat. So at the end of the day, I mean, unless it's tested, otherwise you wouldn't really know, right?
I
Well,
think we kind of
my
went through
point
that.
point is that my entire point is it's not practical, right?
Mm,
Because like you're, I think also, if I understand that argument, it's also under the assumption that like people in government or whatever position, it doesn't have to be government, but essentially that people are perfect asset or capital allocators, right? That there's no
mm,
waste in the system.
It's
That
an
they know
effective government.
exactly which projects,
Yeah.
which will have the highest ROI, blah, 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 blah. But we all know that it's 100% not the
Yeah.
case, right? People, and this is my entire point, everyone has their pet projects. Everyone has their incentives, which may not be aligned with the incentives of me or you or greater society, right? Like I will go, like if I'm a senator from Nebraska, I'm going to go and build, I don't know, like a giant coal mine because I think it's great. Is a coal mine a productive asset? No, probably not. Is it going to be deflationary? Is it going to have like long-term economic ROI for the community, for the country, for society, for the environment? Probably not. But because that's my incentive, I'm going to build a giant fuck off coal mine, and the money's free. So there we go.
Yeah, I lean more towards that camp too. The whole everything's predicated on your government is very effective, and that
Yeah,
may depend on size factors, population factors. I mean, smaller countries maybe can get away with this, right? Where it's more manageable, they have better insights and clarity to how things are running, or there's less variables to kind of affect. But ultimately, I mean, I just yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what maybe it works for Singapore. Is that why you like it, Jianggan, or
I, I think Singapore's case it's rare, right? I mean, we look at small countries, you can theoretically argue that it's easier to govern, it's easier to manage the finances, but most smaller countries are not doing that well. So,
yeah, that's
so I
true.
think Singapore's
yeah.
case is a bit exceptional. So, I mean, we
The,
can't really, yeah.
the the other thing I would say is that I kind of feel we've already been testing a lot of this MMT through quantitative easing for the past few decades. Like Japan's done this, U.S. has done this, Europe has done this, and we're kind of seeing the effects of it. Right, like inflation is rearing its ugly head. Fed is in a really tough position where if they want to keep this engine going, but they have to keep increasing rates. Right, it's between a rock and a hard place. So I kind of feel we're already testing the limits of this. Right, so I don't know. There is a reckoning, and I think we're kind of going through that. So I don't know. Of course, we're going to keep increasing debt ceilings, and we're going to keep trying to roll things. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I think the more important thing is to see how it's manifesting, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Like like Dave was saying earlier before you joined. Especially with investors, everyone's trying to see, waiting for a big crash so they could invest when everything goes down, right? So and I don't know if that's the case in Southeast Asia, because I think things are still growing. With higher interest rate, dollar is stronger, right? So these export countries can export more, right? So maybe it's a little bit different situation here.
Actually, we talk about Japan. I think, I'm not sure about now, but I think historically it had a huge government debt. To the point that if you write everything in zeros, that you can't really count it. It's just huge.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but if I remember, Japan doesn't really have inflation for like decades. So theoretically, if the central bank writes off all the government debt, will anything happen?
I don't know who's holding the debt, so and I also don't know
Yeah, who
the
holds
ties
it
between
down?
it. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's a. I mean, I would imagine be a big problem for those countries if they're not getting their money back. I don't know, man. That's a huge
As
economy, right?
as of March 2023, but the debt is denominated in yen, so theoretically the central bank can write off everything. But anyway, so as of I just did a quick search. As of March 2023, the Japanese public debt is estimated to be approximately 9.2 trillion US dollars.
Yeah, that's
But what
not
is that
So
what is that as a debt to GDP ratio? Because that's usually how these are measured, right?
263% of GDP,
Oh, it's quite high. So
and
it's
it's the
similar to
highest of
China's.
any developed nation. Yeah,
Yeah.
43% of that is held by the Bank of Japan. So which means that, I mean, if they write it off, I'm not sure whether there's any real impact to the economy because I think Japan has struggled with trying to stimulate some inflation, right? Because there's just no inflation.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but also Japan's economy. I mean, but that's also I think one of the arguments, right? Japan's
Mm,
economy has been stagnant for the last 30 years, like since the
mm.
80s,
Yeah.
mm.
right? Like, I
So
mean,
in,
I mean, part of that's demographics. I think their population stopped growing and all that kind of stuff, right? But like, ultimately, like, what was this debt deployed into? Was it productive assets? And my guess is, if I was a betting man, I would probably guess probably not. Like, the majority of it is probably not into productive assets, or it's probably has a higher ratio of unproductive assets versus like a benchmark country like Korea or something.
mm. The inflation of Japan now sits at the highest level since 1989 or 1990,
Oh
which is
wow.
now it's about
But I don't think
5%.
that's I don't think that's idiosyncratic. I mean, right now inflation is everywhere,
That's true.
right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not just Japan. It's not like everyone else is really low inflation. That Japan has high
Yeah.
inflation.
mm,
Yeah, but it's still historically significant for the economy, though, right?
mm, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, all this talks about macroeconomy. I mean, how is that impacting the? I mean, everything that we see and everything that we do, right? So you hear a lot of talk, but usually it just sits like one or two levels down at the I mean of the surface. Then most people you talk to can't really explain that. Okay, all the factors that they're citing, how would that exactly impact? I mean, I don't know, venture investment, um, property, whatever. I mean, what will exactly happen? Which are the factors? Which are the scenarios? So this is something that I mean, now we're trying to figure out a little bit because um, if we're just echo chamber, right? Like sort of taking in whatever the media is saying, taking in whatever everybody else is saying. Ultimately, I mean, the market turned, and most people didn't predict that. But theoretically, people should be able to, right? I'm just asking a hypothetical
I don't.
question.
But sorry, I don't understand your point. Was that a question? Was that a statement? Like what?
It's a statement and as well as a question. So I think at this stage, I mean, there's lots of conflicting macro factors impacting the world. So how how would things pan out? I mean, for the next like 6 to 12 months, and what should people do? I mean, say if you are a founder, what should you do? If you're an investor, what should you do? If you are a corporate decision maker trying to, I don't know, launch a metaverse now, what should you do?
I don't think it changes though, right? It's like fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, there's a bunch of right. So let's back up a few levels here, right? So obviously, the scenario where like if the U.S. does default is catastrophic, right? Because then what happens is like U.S. defaults to tie it to practicality. The U.S. credit rating gets downgraded.
Mm.
Once U.S. like Treasury credit rating gets downgraded, or the country's credit rating gets downgraded, the interest rates they'll have to increase interest rates again
Yeah.
because that's just the cost of borrowing, and that will have rollover effects into every single asset class across the world, right? So whether that's Singaporean real estate, Norwegian T bills, whatever, right? So that would be really really bad for everyone. So I think that's quite straightforward. But at the same right, like if the U.S. is going to go into a recession long term, it's going to be very similar. U.S. is such a large country that any downturn in the economy in terms of the consumption is going to have spillover effects into every other sector, every other industry, right? So to answer, okay, fine. If you're like a entrepreneur in Southeast Asia, I think the fundamental advice or fundamental roadmap now today probably wasn't all that different from what you should have been doing like a year ago, which is like cut costs to the bone and try like really hard to like be default alive. That's I don't think that's changed.
Do,
I think it probably underscores it makes it even more important because I think we're going to be even more uncertain than we were like maybe a year ago. And then I think this is like we're not even at the beginning of a downward cycle, right? So if you think like how these cycles work, it's usually like 2 years, right? 2 years of
yeah.
recession followed by whatever. The U.S. has been in boom cycle for 8 years, so you have to, if you're an operator, you should probably be try to get to default alive and have enough of a cash cushion to at least survive for like 6 to 12 months, you know,
Or build a
in
real
case.
business.
or build a real business. And
Build a real
if you're an
business,
investor,
the way you
right,
should have
this
been
kind of
doing it.
changes the entire investment thesis, right? You can't momentum trade into the next VC investor anymore because that won't happen. You can't be like, oh,
Yeah,
someone else will buy it down the line for like 2x evaluation. I bought it, and that's I can do a secondary or something. That's my exit. So you have to start looking for things that are like default alive or close to
yeah.
default alive.
There's no more. There's less financial shenanigans, right? I mean, like I
Yeah,
think where people get most squeezed would be like the VCs and what the LPs are saying to them. They're like Dave's going around raising right now, right? It's harder, right? I think people
it's
don't want
really
to
hard.
deploy as much, right? So it means as a VC, then you're going to also be more careful with your capital. Things slow down. So I mean, I think, yeah, but I think that's the more obvious stuff, right? At least for this sector. It's always kind of been this way. It's just we kind of forgot because there was just so much money slushing around when interest rates were low. So I think the more practical things like, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy and the spillover effects. So like we had a good discussion earlier about commercial real estate, which was very clear from this. So like if that manifests, I don't know, there's a lot of systemic risk that is to come, right? And that's going to probably be more drastic if it really does spill over, right, from the banking sector, from commercial real estate. So I don't know what that looks like, but at least we know that there are some very tangible things that are very clear, at least, but the effects are not clear. Shall we change the subject, guys?
Up to you.
This,
You're the
this is
host.
all
You're
this is
the
all doom and gloom. Let's change it before Jianggan has to leave. What time do you have to leave, Jianggan? 9:30? 9?
Uh, no. I need to leave before 9. I have a call with Dimitri at 9. So
Okay, so
okay.
then
discuss
what's the
maybe.
last topic you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about
I
Temu?
don't know what you guys want to talk about. Yeah.
I'm just I'm Mr. Doom and Gloom over here. You want to talk about the Succession finale?
I have not watched. I have not watched.
What?
Uh,
I've been saving
What?
up, so I'm
it's
gonna go binge it probably.
I watched it last night. Uh,
Oh, don't talk, no spoilers, guys. Come on.
I'm not going to say.
I
I'm just
mean,
trying to.
I saw the
yeah, no,
headlines. I saw some
I want
headlines
to talk
earlier.
about I want to talk about it.
Okay, yeah,
So,
I'll take
so,
off my headphones and you can talk about it.
I mean,
What did you think?
I'm
Let's talk in vague terms, Jianggan. What did you think in vague terms?
so I've been reading some conspiracy theories about the plot, and there are some interesting things. So, for instance, like everyone uses Apple in a show,
Uh-huh.
only Tom uses Android. What does that mean?
Which subreddit are you on? Where are you getting the stuff? Which which corner of subreddit are you getting the stuff from?
Was that a signal that the writers were sending to the audience beforehand that certain things are going to happen and this person is going to be different than what you have expected, or I don't know.
Okay. I think maybe we should talk about something else. I feel bad for Alex. I don't
No,
want
it's
to ruin
okay. I
it for
took off
him.
my headphones. I didn't hear anything. It's all good.
And
I'm conflicted. I'm very conflicted. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'll go binge it this weekend, and then the next episode we can talk about it.
Okay, that's. I want to pick another topic then, because my choice is not very good. So
but, but don't you feel empty after the finale and what next are you going to watch, right? I mean, you don't really have any like good shows over the next, I don't know, 1 month or 2 months at least.
well, there's
Unless,
going to not be a lot of good shows for a long time because the writers are on strike. Hollywood has their writer strike going on right now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I think it's. Let me check. I
I
think they're
heard
still
something.
striking because
I heard something about
yeah.
I
So
thought it was
they're
a
on
while
strike
ago. They're
about.
still striking.
Dude, the last writer strike was like half a year. It was super long.
That's what I thought. That's
Like
what I
the
thought.
only
Yeah.
yeah, the reason that reality TV was invented, like became so popular, was partly because of this writer strike, or the last
Ooh.
writer strike, not this current
There's
one.
nothing to fill the void. So
Yeah,
all the
that's
trash writers got
no,
in.
that's yes, that's 100% what happened. There was nothing to fill the void. All the channels, all the stations were like, "Oh crap, we have no we have no content, and we need to fill our airtime, or we're hosed. So let's produce a bunch of crap." That's which is
Yeah.
actually kind of funny because I think the nuances of this they're like kind of shooting themselves in the foot, right? Because like so one of the core things about this strike is they want basically Hollywood to stop using AI, which is
Oh, but that's just
that.
stupid.
Yeah, it's not possible, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
not
not going to happen.
feasible.
You can't. Yes, it's not feasible. But then this is the problem because if they all go on strike, what do you think people are going to use to generate content?
AI.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just
Right.
gonna double
You-
down on AI.
Yeah, they just made their problems worse for them. We joke a little bit about this, but it's true, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I think what's going to happen is you're going to get like this bifurcation of
Yeah.
content,
Correct.
right? Of media. Like, it's going to either be like free. It was already quite free. Like UGC is essentially free, but now it's like super free, right? Because AI
Yeah.
can. You don't even need a person anymore. You could just have GPT-4 or whatever just generate full videos for you if you want them to, right?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have like super premium stuff like
Yeah.
Succession, right? And then like everything in the middle, worthless.
Is that a new cat? That's
Why? Yeah. Why do you have a
that's a
cat,
new
Jianggan?
cat.
What is?
That's a new cat, isn't it?
That's a ragdoll. It's a
Uh,
French cat, and his whole family is away for 2 weeks. So
How
I'm just
many
taking
how many cats do you have now?
care. I have 5. This is a guest. We only
Okay,
stay
this
for
is
2
just
weeks.
okay. You're just visit. Okay, he's just visiting cat.
it's so pixelated. It looks like a raccoon.
Yeah, it's huge. Um,
That's a huge cat.
I think that's interesting. Does that mean we should buy more Google stock, Dave? Because YouTube's gonna blow up then. Because where else are you getting free media,
If you want to, yeah, yeah,
right?
probably.
So,
If
right?
you're a
You could think
betting
about
man, yeah,
distribution. Who's gonna benefit from free media? Right now, YouTube's owning
yeah,
it. They're still growing. You put
yeah,
more content that's high quality, AI
yeah,
driven, with less people.
yeah.
That should
That's not
help
a
out a
bad
lot.
investment thesis, but also my guess is like that's probably priced into the stock already. So if you want to sit on it, then that might work. But I think as a
Interesting.
short-term trade, you probably don't want to make that trade because I'm sure that's been priced in.
Yeah. And I guess if you want to be building, you'd be building in that space where the technology used to create this media, right? And AI. So
Dave, do you think people should sit on their Nvidia stocks?
Oh, that's a great question.
what stocks?
It's
Media?
Nvidia,
Nvidia.
Oh,
Nvidia,
Nvidia.
It's like up like
Nvidia.
Yeah.
25%. Yeah, last week.
Oh, but I think All In did like a great. They had a great explainer on this last week. Did you listen to last week's episode? Okay.
Oh
It doesn't
yeah.
it doesn't
Mm.
matter. It just to summarize it, like Chamath had this like there was like this great I don't know if it's Chamath, one of them had like this great graph about like value accretion during like a tech cycle, right? And basically
Yeah,
how
it
that
starts
changes over
with semiconductor, right? Yeah.
yeah, basically it started with a semiconductor and as time went on, it went to more of the platforms and finally you have like most of the value accretion went to um, Google and Alphabet and sorry, not Alphabet, Meta, those guys, right?
Yeah.
To answer your question directly, I mean, I think it depends on the holding period, but I think for the midterm, as a short to midterm, I would sit on it, but mostly because I wouldn't know what to deploy your capital into otherwise. That's so this is kind of a reflection of what people are saying to me because when I go talk to people everyone's kind of like uncertain because they don't know price discovery is kind of out the window right now. No one knows what's like what they should deploy into. So I also have the same problem. If I was sitting on a bunch of Nvidia stock, if I sold it, what would I put money into? I mean, honestly, for me it's like physical assets now. Like I'm a big believer in anything that's like a tangible product because what won't get automated away is like a physical good.
Yeah.
So that would be my investment. And that is my investment thesis now, right? It's like I look at where technology has gone for the last 10 years and where we ended up, and like I think it's been hashed over a lot. People always thought that the blue collar jobs would be the ones that would be automated away, but now it looks like the value destruction or where it's going to be where automation is really going to happen is in white collar work. But at the same time, people always need physical goods. I mean, do you know what the cost is for like a plumber now in the U.S.? It's like astronomical.
How much?
It's like
200
it's
an
like
hour?
$1,000 to get them to come fix like a simple thing.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Because
Yeah,
this
because
that
there's just because no one wants there's this huge supply and demand imbalance. No one wants to be a plumber. Now there's not enough plumbers, and now everyone has these houses that they want fixed, right? So I think
Yeah.
investing in the
I don't
physical world will pay dividends going forward. But I mean, that's
and also that
then
kind of job is it's hard to fully automate, right? You always have like a bits
Yeah,
and pieces
yeah.
of that kind of job, which you still need human
Exactly.
to do it, and you might
Right
as
or
well
Yeah.
get
robot.
human to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's, I guess, if you pushed me on it, that'd be my investment thesis. If I
I
had to sell the Nvidia stock, I would sell it
yeah.
and buy into like things that facilitate physical goods or production or services.
Sorry, the cat is just
You're
jumping
really
around.
distracted by that pussycat.
Do you want the cat to be the fourth host to replace Andrew? I mean, at
Yes.
this point, it's
Yeah. Yeah. Studio's good. There's a huge learning curve. Waiting for Dave to come visit, but it's nice to do in person. I think it's a lot more steps in work.
Mm.
I really at this point, because I'm creating too much content, I do need like a full time team to help out with it. So, but yeah, that's where it's heading. More in studio content. That's more formats that are wider. So yeah, it's the beginning of a long journey, I think. So but it's been fun. It's been fun, to kind of figure all that stuff out, build again, solve problems like this. Um, More stress, more
Yeah.
headaches, but in the good kind. So yeah, if you come through KL, stop by the studio. We can do a live session. I did one with Andrew, but he said a lot of political stuff. So I'm like trying to sit on it and figure out how to cut it. He was supposed to give feedback, but he hasn't. So I might just cut it myself
polit-
and maybe put it out there when he destroys his life. But we'll see.
political stuff. What did he say? Or like, what was the gist
social
of it?
social political commentary on the structures of Malaysia. So
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
so
yeah.
there's a lot of
You
stuff that
should
I
have
could
put that.
maybe go to jail about. So I have to cut
Yeah,
out a lot of
you
it.
should not release that.
Yeah, I released the part on AI. He had a lot of things to say about AI, and him exploring what he wants to do with his life, because he's fully exited his fintech startup in London. So
Oh yeah.
he's a free agent in the world now. So I don't know what Andrew will be up to, but
I think you should just buy a van and drive around like Eastern
you
Europe and like Central
did he
Asia, and I think he
did he
would
talk
really
to you
enjoy that
about
life.
that? Did he talk to you about that? Because that's exactly what he's been talking about.
Yeah, he's been talking. He mentioned that he wanted to buy a van last time I saw him in
Yeah, he's still talking about it.
Bulgaria. I think you just
Yeah,
buy the fucking van and just,
yeah.
not a
He
lot of
wants to,
money.
he. I think he's also into like creating content around like these very hipster type topics. Like these kind of these people who are like doing like craftsmanship in certain things that are
but
I don't know. Yeah,
content creation now is easy, right? With TikTok, with all these tools and potential with AI. So I was talking to a friend in China last week, and she said, "Hey, you have amazing blogs that you write in Chinese. Why don't you turn them into video?" I said, "I don't
yeah,
have time for that. My team doesn't have time for that." And then she said, "Look, I mean, now there's like all these tools that you can just feed the text in, and it will generate a video for you automatically. And quite often, I don't need to change anything; just publish."
yep. That's exactly what Dave was talking about, right? It's getting easier
Mm,
and easier to create free content, right? So
Yeah, content's gonna be free.
mm.
yeah, but I'm still trying to process my trip to China, guys. There was too much. I don't, Dave. Why did you hate China so much? Like when you went recently, like what was your gripe with it?
Because it's still China and it sucks.
The one thing I can agree with is that like people are still very rough there, like in
Yeah,
especially smaller shops or like big crowded areas. Like it's just like you have to really fight for your space. Like you have to assert yourself very strongly. If not, you're just gonna get trampled over.
I was
Um,
I was there for 3 weeks in April, and was really tiring actually transiting, right? I mean, from one city to another. I mean, just
it's a
get your
battle.
way through the crowded airport. You
Yeah,
order not to be late for your flight, even though you arrive super early, and try to actually get into the plane. Like with like a bunch of people sort of trying to jump the queue, etc. And spending like, I don't know, an hour and a half to get out of the airport to try to find a
yeah.
car which doesn't know where to pick you up. So all this massive scale, I mean, makes like all these things very the experience not entirely like smooth and pleasant, but I guess that's also the reason why all these mega facilities have to implement kind of technology to facilitate it, because otherwise this is impossible. I mean,
But I
just
saw
look at the
China.
scale of the airport. It's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, But I felt that if you are like this is a system built by the Chinese for the Chinese, and if you are a part of that group, it's pretty efficient. I thought. Like once I was able to access Alipay through a credit card, things became smoother. You know, UI UX may be a little bit tricky because I can't read Chinese. Maybe it's more optimized for localized apps and tech, or smoother because I'm going through like a roaming, so data's a little bit laggy. But I felt that like if you are a part of that system, it just makes perfect sense and it's highly efficient for yourself. Of course, so if you're a foreigner, it just doesn't make sense. There's a lot of friction. So, but I felt like what you described, like you would need mega facility to facilitate all those things, otherwise it doesn't work. But like going from being there for about a week, I start to understand why Super App works there. It seems very efficient for a Chinese person because everything's very centralized. Like it stems from very strong controls, and I could see why it's not as compatible outside of China. But it just made more sense, when you're in it and you could kind of see and experience, a small slice of it. So I don't know. I felt it was efficient to I don't know, experience a little bit of it.
Because
But the thing
I
is,
need to
like,
run, I need to prepare
yeah,
for coding time. So
okay.
Okay.
See you, man. Bye, Jianggan.
do I leave it open or
Just you could just leave the session, then just leave. You can leave, right?
I can't click the button?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I guess I have
mine's
to
grayed
end the
out
session
too.
then. All right, I guess we'll just
Okay.
end it here then, guys. All right.
Okay.
No,
See you,
go
Jianggan.
ahead. Go ahead. I'll just hide camera and I'll just mute so you guys can continue. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Well, I'll just say one story before we end then about that. So this regarding the PRC, right? It kind of works and it's kind of efficient until it doesn't, and then when it doesn't, then there's no like release valves and there's no
That's true.
outlet. And
That's
I'll be
true. I know what you
very
mean.
specific
I know
about
what you
this
mean.
criticism. So I had dinner with a friend like last month when I was in Edinburgh, and he was working for BP in Shanghai, building like one of these giant refinery ships
Yeah.
off off one of the shipyards. And so he was in Shanghai during like the huge COVID lockdown,
Yeah.
right? And he was telling me about his experience like during the lockdown, and it's like it was crazy, it was surreal. Like his complex, so mind you, this is like a Chinese apartment
Yeah.
complex, so like probably like 2,000 people live here or something, right?
Yeah.
As a conservative estimate. Like this complex was left out of food deliveries for like 3 weeks.
Oh shit.
They just
So
didn't get food.
they
And
had to fend for
this is like when
themselves.
you were locked into your complex, you couldn't leave your complex,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they were like the way he told me the story he was telling me, he was like he was literally down, it was his wife and him. They were down to their last cup of rice.
Oh
And that
shit.
was it. They had nothing else. So if they didn't have that last cup of like after that last cup of rice, they were done. They had no more
Yeah.
food. They literally eaten all their food.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, no. Like I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that it's not like a universal experience. Yeah, but like this is a problem of centralized control, right? There's
Yeah, it's a
like
problem with
there. Yeah, it was. I heard a few stories too from people in Shanghai where like they would lock up people in like malls or department stores. Malls are okay because you can actually go to the
yeah,
bathroom. There's restaurants running,
yeah,
but like there was one group of people that were locked up in a Uniqlo and they
yeah,
had no food for 48 hours, right?
yeah,
So
exactly. It's crazy.
yeah, that is one of the downsides. I see. I mean, I see your point where because the system is so centralized and tied together, you have extremely high efficiencies, but also there's no room for anything that doesn't fit. So, and there's a lot of things that actually don't fit, well, especially for foreigners. But like, or there's a lot of legacy things that don't make sense anymore, but it still runs through the bureaucracy, right? So then, like, there's a lot of things they do just don't make sense, but they just do it anyway.
Yeah, well,
Like,
it's Orwellian in that
yeah,
way,
yeah,
right? It's just
yeah,
and this is like the I mean, there's been so many like films and books written about this, right? Like, did you ever see
yeah.
Brazil, the film Brazil?
No, no,
You should watch the film Brazil, and
yeah.
afterwards we can have this conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the to play devil's advocate, right? That's the social contract, and I can see for the average person the benefit because like the average person doesn't need to do very complicated things, and everything just runs smoothly. Just go to your job, get food all through your app, go home, watch some TV, right? Like for the majority of the people, they're not outside the system where it affects them, so it's perfectly fine, right? Of course, it's always a problem if you're a minority or if you're on the fringes where things need to be more nuanced, but they don't have that nuance, right? But by and large, though, like the trade off is safety, new infrastructure, things that work. So, I mean, I guess that would be the devil's advocate.
I would argue that that contract is also not no longer being fulfilled. Do you know what the youth unemployment rate is in China?
I think that's different because this is also the other thing I realized is that if you look at it on a if we look at it on a per capita basis, China's like maybe approaching the bottom of a high income country, right? But
No, they're not even middle income yet. I think by
no,
most
not even middle
definitions,
income.
they're not. They're
Oh,
not. They're like barely middle income, if that. Let me check.
okay, fair enough then. Like so, but like say if you go to like a tier two city, I think the wealth is spread very well for a country that's not even middle income, right? Maybe of
Okay,
course you go to the countryside
according to World Bank, it is now high middle income country,
yeah,
according
high
to
middle
World
income
Bank.
status. Yeah, so it's just approaching the bottom of the bottom of a high income country, right? It's on that trajectory, but like, whether they cross it, I don't know. But I think the more point is like you don't need much money if you spread the wealth evenly, and it seems like the wealth has been spread, right? Like what people are buying, what they're wearing, what they're eating, the infrastructure, right? So I think the contract for the average person is still alive. It's well and alive.
No,
They,
but you're ignoring how that wealth was created. China became a middle income country because they were open to market reforms.
yeah, correct.
That's how they got there. And now Xi Jinping
Yeah.
was like, no, fuck that. We don't need none of that free like market capitalism stuff. I'm going to do like top down command style, right?
Mm,
I mean, it's not quite to the extent that like when Mao Zedong was around with USSR, but
yeah.
it's kind of leaning back in that direction.
Ye- Yeah,
And that never
yeah.
works. Like there has never been an example of like a command economy at that scale that has been like long term successful.
Yeah,
It just
so like
doesn't
that's
work. You can't. It's too complicated.
correct.
You like
Which
a
which
human being can't manage
yeah.
it.
Which I think inherently there will be outward and inward pressures to liberalize, right? Well, I mean, I think my earlier point is that there's enough wealth that explains the phenomenon we're saying where there's high unemployment in the youth is because it's with that lay down culture, right? They just don't want to work because it's just highly competitive. It's they would rather just just make enough money to do what they want to do. And they also the fact that they're overeducated, right? Everyone trying to get to the best schools has a whole class of people who can't get jobs, so they're trying to reform that right now. They're going through this huge kind of like disruption in education where they're getting rid of all the extracurricular classes. So there's no more after school programs that's gonna be mandated. They want them just to go home instead and do other things. And you kind of have to get if you're smart, you have to get by through the system on your own merit. So there's no tuition, none of this stuff. They want them to do other things, right? So they're trying to make it more well balanced because I think that's the effect and push people more to trade schools. So they're trying to handle it. I don't know if they're going to be successful, but a lot of that, I don't know. It's just a different world. I'm trying to wrap my head around. So
I would just argue that the CCP, let's just talk about the CCP specifically, right,
yeah,
has had a long history of trying to do these like top down diktats, right?
yeah,
And they have like almost never worked.
yeah,
They have almost never worked. Like I've actually, I could just say that they have never worked, and they have had actually like some straight up catastrophic consequences.
mm,
They've done this before. This is not the first time they've done this, right? They're 100 years of power. They've done this many times,
yeah,
right? Like the famines of the 60s,
yeah,
that was all CCP caused. The one child policy, which has led them to their current
yeah,
demographic issue. CCP, like CCP,
yeah.
TikTok, like they're not good at this. And it's not that they're not good at this. It's just like no one is good at it because you just can't.
You
The
can't. Yeah,
unforeseen consequences are too too
too
much,
broad.
right? You
Yeah,
can't. You're too broad. You can never predict it.
yeah. Then what's the I mean, there's got to be some positive. To me, I do see the progress for the average person though. And I don't know if they
Sure,
like because if you're part of the majority, uh, there's always gonna be that percentage that get messed up by these policies, which is actually a large nominal number, but like percentage wise, it's still not the majority, right? So it still chugs along for the average person until, of course, until
sure,
you get hit by
yeah,
a bad policy, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know.
No, that's fine. No, but I'm not arguing that it's not. It's like I'm not arguing that it's not good for probably
Yeah,
like
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
average citizen, but I just don't like it. right? Like you're
Yeah.
asking
Okay.
a
Okay.
personal
Understood.
question. It's
It's a
like,
personal
do
question.
you want to participate in that
Yeah.
system, right? And I'm
Yeah.
just saying emphatically, no, I do not.
It's true. The funny part is like for all the people who are who like to see the positives only, like as a confirmation bias, they still don't want to live there. You know, they're very like pro, like this is very good. There's progress. There's infrastructure. There's building, but ultimately like no, I still like my country. You know, so no one's like saying I'm gonna uproot and move to China. So yeah,
Yeah, no one wants to live in China. The Chinese don't even want to live in China.
I think the wealthier ones. I think the average person are fine. I think honestly, a lot of people want to live in China.
Yeah, and everyone aspires to be
Ton of people
wealthy.
do.
So people aspire to be
Yeah,
wealthy.
exactly.
So my point is, if we had a choice, they would be rich and not living in China.
Mm. You mean that's where they would trend to? Or well, no, I
Yes.
think for the average for the I think there's enough wealth spread where like these young people just don't want to work anymore. That's the problem, and I don't know how they're going to fix that. So
No, I think that's because they have a one-child policy. So they have a bunch of people that will feed them because that's where all their household income is
mm,
going to go. They're kind of
that's
enabled,
true.
right? If they weren't
Interesting
enabled, they
theory.
wouldn't be able to do this. This is
That's
like
true.
the great wealth transfer that's happening in the US. Like all these parents that made all this
Yeah,
money in the PRC, they only have
yeah,
one kid, right? So it's even
yeah,
worse in the US, where at least you have like two or three kids,
yeah,
right? So these single children, they'll get everything, right? And in China, like your parents will buy you your house. I mean,
mm,
I'm making some broad statements, but like generally
yeah,
speaking, your parents will help you buy your house, right? They'll like help you
yeah,
raise your kid. They'll help you do all these things, right? Because there's only one kid
yeah.
for
All the
them to
resources
work
can
on.
go to it.
All the
Yeah,
resources go to one, right? So they can do this
yeah,
because they're kind of enabled, right? I think if it
yeah,
was a different environment where if they didn't have like a parental support and they couldn't like
yeah,
eat if it
yeah,
didn't work, you would not be seeing this.
yeah. I would imagine it's probably less so for like a city like Shanghai, where it's just the cost of living is way too high, so there's less people to find like that. But yeah, other cities maybe I don't know. It's possible. Yeah,
Oh man, just live at home. Food's not that. I mean, food in Shanghai's not that expensive, right? It's a
it's
rent.
getting more
Rent's
expensive
expensive.
though.
It
It's
is getting more
increasing a lot
expensive.
actually. It's increasing
Yeah,
a lot. It's like
it is
salads are
extremely low.
like 15 USD now for like a salad. It's getting up to 20 soon,
Where did you
probably
go
in the
for
next years.
salad?
No, that's what my friend who I just met. She was telling me like she was complaining about the cost of salads now being too expensive. It was something like 80.
Was this
I forget what it was.
was this some Atas friend? Sounds Atas. Sounds like a fancy friend that eats at fancy salad bars.
Probably. Yeah.
I was having meals. I was having like noodles for like 15 kwai.
Yeah, that's because you're eating noodles. Yeah, of course.
I also got food poisoning from eating those noodles.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so there's that.
Yeah. To be fair, the food doesn't agree with me as much. Like yeah, it's a
Uh,
different palette out there. So
yeah, I was incapacitated for like a day and a half. It was not very good. It was
that's
bad.
not fun. That's not
No, it was
fun.
very bad. No.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I
So
had such like a bitter opinion of it. I'm like, no, fuck that place.
so what are your rest of your plans for US?
I'm going to Miami this weekend.
Okay. Doing a
Hang out with
tour.
some crypto bros.
They have money.
Not anymore.
The OG
Depends if you
ones
sold
do.
out.
The OG
Depends.
ones.
Yeah, depends. Like,
The,
um,
they're still holding. There's a lot of guys who are holding. They have the cash. Just a matter if they want to convert it or not.
yeah. I'm going to Miami, and then I'll be there Friday through Monday,
Yeah.
and then I'm back here. We'll see. I don't know. I think we might. We can. We have some. Like I said, we have three committed. Just need to actually get
Just
this
close it.
done. Just close it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll be back like June 21st or 22nd.
21st. Yeah. I.
One of
Yeah.
those days.
We.
I think you were
I don't
gone
know if there.
already, actually, right?
Yeah. I don't know if there's an overlap, but well, if you're back, we'll try to meet up before we leave.
Let me just check. Let me check my exact
Yeah.
date, actually.
Because I'm not sure when the expo is exactly.
I'm
That's why
back
I was
Monday
hard.
the 5th at 3. Oh,
Monday
wait,
the
no,
5th.
this is. No, 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 no. Sorry, that's something else. Not Monday the 5th. I am back on 21st, the morning of the
21st of
21st.
June, Wednesday. Okay.
June, Monday, like 8 a.m., 8:30. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. I'll mark it. Hopefully we can catch each other.
Yeah, well, otherwise, how long are you going to be in the States for?
Not too sure. Expo's if we're only going end of June, the expo's only
What's
that
the
probably
expo called?
last. New York Food Expo? I don't know. It's not my expo. New York Expo, end of June.
There's a summer fancy food show, June
Nah, I
25th.
don't know.
Is it
It's
that
New
one?
York. They have tons of expos, probably, right? So that's the
This
thing.
is
So
this is
I'm not
this
too
is
sure.
true. This is true.
Yeah, but then like I think we'll just be vacationing in July, doing some work home vacation type situation. So try to see a
Hmm.
different part of US, and then probably sometime in July, end of July, we'll be back, I guess, or early August. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah.
Makes sense.
What else is anything different back home? Everything the same? Food,
Yeah, more or less. Same old
inflation,
Wisconsin.
inflation. Okay, work.
Uh, Inflation's down, I think. Inflation's down a little
Oh,
bit.
that's good. That's good.
But that's the thing, right? Like there's also, I mean, to lend credence to the MMT proponents, like a lot of
Yeah,
the modern inflation is actually supply side.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was a lot of like just it was a lot of supply issues working its way through the system.
yeah. It takes a lot of time for it to process, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
correct.
then day job is okay.
You can turn this off.
Yeah, let me
I
turn
guess
this
you
off.
just cut it. You can cut it later.